Hello everyone, this lecture is to summarize a few key points we have discussed on September 3rd in a live lecture with our online and on-campus student in fall 2020. The recording failed, so I have to create a shorter version of it, kind of concentrate everything into one lecture. The key point is to give you a few technical insight into what you'll be encountered in both Module 0 and Module 1 tutorial. And altogether, we have 4 tutorials already. Module 0 tutorial, Module 1A, Module 1B, and Module 1C tutorial. Now, these 4 tutorials altogether introduce 4 different type or different kind of database environment to you. This is the complexity that was designed into this particular class. And some of our students, if you are not paying too much attention to detail, you might just be confused. So I decided I have to do something about it. Now, first of all, the majority of our tests will be done in this UIS Citrix Virtual Desktop. As we have discussed in lecture or Module 0 already, it will be this Windows 10 GIS Oracle desktop. And I have already opened up the desktop in the background, so let me kind of bring it up. Now, the first thing you need to know regarding this particular environment is that when it's opening up either in your browser or on your desktop, it's usually opened up in a full desktop screen format like this one. So this will create an illusion that your computer has been taken over. And this is first sort of like a thing you need to know, that don't confuse this particular virtual desktop with your real computer or the local computer that you are using. Well, the first thing you need to do in this particular environment when you start this virtual desktop is to start our local Oracle service. So let me start by opening up a little utility called service from within Windows. And this service is a control center. In Windows, we call this administration utility or administration tool to control or configure the system behavior. And this lists of a lot of service there. For Oracle, that we have 2 instances of the Oracle server installed. One successful, the other failed. The successful one is the Oracle Enterprise Edition 18C. The failed one is the Express Edition. So on the screen, you see that there is one I'm highlighting now. It's called the ORCL service. This is the main service for the Enterprise Edition. On the other hand, the other one has a postfix as XE. It stands for Express Edition. This was a failed, you can say, the installation attempt we try using this virtual box. So the service going to be starting is the Oracle or Oracle Service ORCL, and this one is to be start first. It usually take a while to get it started, so I'll pause and come back in a few seconds. All right, after about 20 seconds or maybe 30 seconds or so, the service has been started and running. So you can see a running status for this particular service. The second important service need to be started to make Oracle service work or Oracle server working is this listener. So and in Oracle world, in the new 18th or after server, there is a concept called pluggable database, and the pluggable database is one of this new feature in Oracle server to increase the ability for one single database service to host multiple company or multiple unit. Each one of this unit can run their independent database server within the same installation of the Oracle server. And so this is called the pluggable concept. But in any case, that the listener is one of the service controlling which one of this pluggable instance of the Oracle database you're dealing with. And in this case, we're dealing with this home one instance. So that particular status has to be started. And this particular service listener is actually the main service for Oracle to control or listen to network traffic. So, and because server is usually installed on a network, it could be on a internal local area network, or it could be on internet. In any case, in order to make the network well, in order to make the Oracle database register on the internet, you need to have this listener service. Listener, just like the name suggested, listening to network traffic from the user request, and then you can respond, or the service can respond back into the to the request. And next, I want to show you a few links from our class website. And on our class website, you will see the module number 1. There are a few UIS web page. Let me show you where they are. And so going to module 1, you will see on the very top 2 pages. One is called the account application page, and you open it up and it will take you to a UIS website. And this is something what we call the account application page. And the server that we are encountering here is a server called oracle.uis.edu. So going to this website and apply your account, and this will generate one account on the server which is not the server we just saw in the virtual desktop. Different server. It's a server installed on a UIS ACAD machine, and we'll see that in a minute. The other page that right after you apply the account, I will recommend you to do is going to the third link or the third item on the module 1 page, and try to go into, this is called the password reset page. Right, this particular page will reset your password for the Oracle account from your original UIS account to the so-called the default account. The default account will be Oracle. And why I'm asking you to do that? This will help me if I'm going to be troubleshooting your problem, and if the password is standardized, I can rule out the problem of the password. And you have done both already, and you're ready to go. We can go back to the virtual desktop. And one of the first things we do in virtual desktop is to start an application called PuTTY. And PuTTY is a terminal software. It's actually a command line utility, allow in this case, the Windows environment to talk to any server that has different protocol in there. In the protocol support in here, including raw, telnet, rlogging, SSH, and serial. And each one of them represent different communication protocol over the history of internet development. And without the detailed explanation about the network communication knowledge in there, SSH stands for Secure Shell Communication. It's probably the standard protocol used by most of the servers today, and it is also used by another utility on the Macintosh environment called the terminal program. You can also use SSH in terminal program to establish similar connection. And the server I'm typing here is called the UIS ACAD server. This is the server we designed it for. It's a sandbox server we designed for computer science and MIS student. And to connect to it, you just simply open the connection and click yes here, allowing the unsecure connection. This login is your UIS login. And the server you are connecting to is the UIS ACAD server. On the very top, I'm moving the cursor. Hopefully you can see that. On the very top, you see the server name is UIS ACAD 5. And so currently that's UIS ACAD 5. And but when you are entering the URL, it's actually UIS ACAD. It's an alias pointing to that particular server. If you enter UISACAD5.UISAD.UIS.edu, it will connect you to the server as well. when you type in the password in this environment, you will not see the cursor moving. This is very important. Some of us, some of our students in particular, if you are new to the terminal program or PuTTY program like this one, you will feel a little bit uncomfortable because when you type, nothing is going on in here. But essentially, it's just taking your password. So when you type, I'm typing here, you will not show the cursor moving. And I'm trying to type it correctly, and sometimes you will encounter problem because when you it's a human like a behavior response to the system. If the system does not give you real-time response, you may just feel like the difficulty of typing your password, especially when our password is a complicated, very complex password in most of the environment. But anyway, so we are entering this server called the Red Hat Enterprise Linux Server version number 6. And one of the indication in system administration is that whenever you see a weird cursor type, like in here, a dollar sign, or sometimes you see a percentile sign, it usually represents a system that is not Windows or Macintosh. Most likely in today's environment, probably 70 to 80% chance you will encounter one version of Unix or the other, especially in a network environment. And because it's Unix and Linux system are essentially free, open source. So when people are building a lot of internet website or server, they tend to use Linux or Unix instead of Windows or other operation system. All right, so this is an interface you're interacting with through a terminal, but now by identifying the top of the window, which is the server name, and the shape of the cursor, you know which system you're dealing with. So we're dealing with Red Hat Linux number 6 here. We can log in or actually start program, just like you can start program within a window environment by either using menu or typing the program's name here. You can in the command line environment, to start a program, you can only type in the name of the program. And the program we're going to be using in this example or tutorial is called SQL+. This is a standard program used by Oracle environment. So it really doesn't matter which version of the Oracle database you are using, it all provides the SQL+. So if everything else fails, as long as you can make connection to Oracle or control the physical server yourself, you can use a command line SQL+ to talk to the server. And the language you're going to be using in SQL+ is mainly Oracle Command plus SQL in a hybrid format. So here, the correct way to enter the system is using SQL+, the program's name, plus or extend entering the username and your server name. Right? And this is actually significant because what it actually do is telling you the program SQL+ can, even though it exists on the installation of the Linux environment, it is actually a program that has the ability to connect into server outside of your installation. But in this case, the oracle.us.edu is actually installed on the same server. Actually, I'm not 100% sure yet now, but in the past, it was installed on the same physical server. But this is telling you that using this program, I'm going to be logging or connect to the user called twng22 and the server is oracle.us.edu. If you have already reset your username password, and Oracle, the password here will be simply Oracle. If you choose not to reset, and the password will be the same as your UIS NetID identity there. So now we see that we are connecting to a database 12c Enterprise Edition, while the service we just started on the background is 18c, right? So the version is different and but they are all database Oracle Enterprise Database Server. In some situation, you might encounter that even the version are the same, but you are actually talking to two different systems. So at this particular point in time, we already talked to one system already through this environment. The other more universal Oracle user interface is something we call the SQL developer. So if I start SQL developer here, and this is actually what you have done already in module 0 tutorial. You'll be using this more often in our class, and this is pretty much the most popular graphical user interface we use here. And what we are going to be doing here is that I want to show you that there's no difference between what you do in the SQL developer environment compared to this command line SQL Plus environment. Right, so when you have successfully start the server here, well, actually not server, the SQL developer here, you can make connection. And this is the first connection I'm going to be making. And let's just say allows read and write. And let's call this UIS Oracle 12C developer account. Right, so this is the account on the 12C server, which we just applied through our UIS web page, and username is your UIS username, and password is I recommended reset to Oracle. If you look at the host name here, this is actually the field specify the server name, and local host usually refer to the computer you are using. In this case, the virtual desktop. But for the UIS server, it has to be oracle.uis.edu. It is the URL specified or the name registered on the network. Now, one of the tricky thing here is this particular name, oracle.uis.edu, is not visible outside of UIS firewall for security purpose. Right? Can we make it outside of UIS and you can access everywhere? Yes, but the current setting is it is visible only within the UIS firewall, and the virtual desktop is within the UIS firewall. If you use the SQL developer on your home machine outside of UIS campus, you will not be able to make connection unless you have VPN connection to the UIS network. Now in this class, I choose not to teach you how to use the UIS Cisco Connect Everywhere VPN. The reason is that I found in my personal experience, the Cisco VPN sometimes will conflict with some of the program I use on my own computer. So I like to use the virtual desktop better, because the virtual desktop itself is a virtual network connection, but it does not affect your local computer network setting. So that is probably more reliable way of designing the tutorial that I have. The other thing we need to set up in terms of configuring the connection is the SID is a special name for the Oracle server that you have to specify for every installation of the Oracle you have done. And for this particular version, this 12C, the SID is Oracle. Our ITS team actually changed the default name. The default name for the SID for any Oracle installation is ORCL, and for the Express Edition is XE. And actually on the Oracle installation guide, it recommends you to change the default SID. And what is SID? I'll encourage you to do a little bit of research on the web. Search Oracle database SID and try to figure out what they are. Basically, it is a unique name for any installation of the Oracle server. So once you have this network configuration correctly, you can test and make connection. And this is one connection on your SQL developer environment. And one other thing I want to demonstrate to you is that, well, actually, before I demonstrate that, I want to make another connection. The other connection is that I'll call this local Oracle 18C system account. All right, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using a system account. Lowercase or uppercase, they are the same for Oracle in terms of username, but the password is case sensitive. The password here is password, lowercase. And in this case, we're going to be changing the XE to ORCL. And the server name will be localhost. So you know that this connection is connecting using the user account called DBA. DBA happened to be system account happened to be a DBA account here. And we are connecting to the local database server. So I'm making two connections already. And this is important in terms of database management. This course is called database management. So managing environment, managing system in the different environment is one of actually our focus here. So you have to be very detail oriented at this particular point in time and make sure you are dealing with the right thing that you are doing. Let me demonstrate a little bit. Going back to the Oracle 12c interface that we interact with the system earlier, let me type in a little command here under you see the prompt. It says SQL prompt. It means that we're dealing with SQL Plus here. This command I'm going to be doing here is called show user. The convention is that usually whenever we type in the command in SQL Plus, we put a semicolon. In this case, you don't need to, but if you put one in there, that's fine. And why we put a semicolon in there later when we get into chapter 2. Semicolon is the end of a SQL statement. So a lot of us, we kind of used to the format putting a semicolon to end. A lot of programming language, including the Java or PHP or even .NET, C#, you all use a semicolon. So it become a very typical ending statement, sort of like a convention that we use. So this user, as you can see, is TWNG22. And we can do the same thing in the SQL developer environment. And the only thing that you have to pay attention in this environment is make sure which tab you are dealing with. Look on the very top, and when I move between tabs, these are in SQL developer, we call them worksheet. Each tab represents different window talking to different connection here, right? Two different connection. This one is local Oracle 18C. So when you highlight this worksheet, you are talking to the local system. So when I type in the same command, show user, put a semicolon, right, as a convention. You can run this particular command within here, but the way you run it, it's not typing enter. In here, if you want to run the command, you can use one of these two button here. One is a green, kind of big green button triangle. The other is a smaller triangle within the document. These two differ in a way that the big one execute one command at a time. The smaller one execute more than one. They can run the entire script on your page. In this case, we only need to run one, and we only have one. So you can click any one of those to make it work. The result will show up in here where I highlighted. It says the user system. So now you know which user you are dealing with. And looking at the tab, you know which system you're talking to. Right? So this is the way that we identify ourselves as system. In the second one, and I'll show you without the semicolon, and I switch to UIS Oracle 12c and run the statement. And this one give you a statement that user is TWNG22. So you know that within this environment, I can simultaneously managing multiple connection, meaning that each connection has its own database in there. And so you know that you can manage multiple database here. There are some feature that does not change, I should say, that it does not similar to the window file explorer, because this is not file management, this is database management, and you might find it a little bit awkward. Say for example, when you try to copy a data from one database to another, you cannot drag and drop from one database connection to another. You cannot copy, you have to do something else. This is the nature of the database system architecture, so it hasn't been changed to that sophisticated yet, and there are other reasons, of course, why you cannot do that. But this is some of the things that you, as a typical end user, when you get into the system administrator, you have to get used to. This is what moved you from a regular power user on computer to a system administrator who can manage either a network operation system or, in this case, database management system. So we are dealing with two systems already, right, and two accounts. And you can actually make another connection to the same system using different account. That creates another layer of complexity that may confuse you even more. So be careful about looking at which system you're dealing with by looking at the worksheet tab, the name of the tab, and by looking at which account, which user that you are using every time you try to practice. And we in module 1 tutorial, one of the main job is to restore data set back into one of your account, and that will somehow confuse some of our students. So make sure you know which system, which user account you are dealing with. And next, I want to switch to the background using another platform that we have encountered in this particular class. And this is called a cloud account. Right, and when you sign in, it is a server controlled not by UIS, not by you, not by the it's controlled by the Oracle company, and this is a free cloud space that Oracle allows us to learn, to practice, to play around. It actually is fully functional. The only limitation is the data quota they give you is that is very limited. So it's unlikely you can use this for commercial purpose. But once you get into it, you can actually use it for personal use. I mean, for whatever you want to keep track of your database or building any report to share with your coworkers or friend circle or family, you can use this one to generate report and managing data. There's another catch in using this system. That is, they purge the space, the workspace, we call them, very frequently, every month. So if you don't use the system for a month, they will send you an email says, do you want to keep it? If you do not reply in a couple of days, they will simply just delete your work in there. So be very careful that in using this environment. And of course, that if you actually purchase their environment, you can keep the work you do there forever. Forever means as long as you pay their service. So this is the third environment that we're going to be dealing with. And if you go into this environment, go into this place called SQL command, I believe we can also type in the same command here and try to run this command here. Oh, this one does not allow you to do that. All right, so it does not take that. But they all function very similarly. The final interface I want to show to you is the University of Arkansas interface. And I use this particular environment just to give you a space so that you can have access to SQL Server. And I do not want our ITS team to install both SQL Server and Oracle on the same virtual desktop. It will impact the performance too much, and to a limit that does not work very well. So instead I'm using the SQL Server on the University of Arkansas. The other reason I want to use this server is because they have data set that already installed on within their firewall in another database server. You can only use their data set with using the desktop in their firewall to access the data set. And so that is one of the things I want you to sort of get a experience or understanding or exposure to it. And the tool we're going to be accessing SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server, is this one called the Microsoft Server Management. This is a similar tool offered by Microsoft compared to the SQL Developer offered by Oracle. So when you start, you will see the resemblance of this particular tool to the SQL Developer that we have in the background. So this is the SQL Server Management Studio interface, and because I'm using this within a browser, and later I want to show you that be very careful when you managing the desktop within the browser. Sometimes you will close the wrong window as well. And just to show you what they have multiple way of starting the server to play different role: an analysis server, reporting server, database engine. We're using a database engine, and the server is not actually installed on the desktop. It's installed on the Walton College, the University of Arkansas server called essql1.walton.uark.edu. So this is their server, and we are using the window authentication method and try to connect into a database. And this is a database that associated with your account, and in the tutorial that you will learn how to use this particular database or management studio. As you can probably see that it has already connected so many databases, and actually this is one connection on the server using one account. You can create multiple connections as well by creating another connection using similar method like what you do in the SQL Developer. But in here, we have only one account on the remote, our friend university environment. So I will just keep this as one. And go look for your own database. And this is a place will be available throughout the semester. If you ever want to use SQL Server as your environment, you can always come here. When you upload or create data set inside the environment, it will be there to keep for you. So you can always come back and practice your SQL, which we will do very quickly in chapter 2 of your learning. So this is the environment, and if you shrink it, you notice that it's actually running as a full window in our full screen window within the browser. So be very careful to each one of this close button. There's one here, there's another one on the tab, and there's a third one on the, in my case, a Chrome browser. Close any one of them that has different effect in. So don't you always go to the the most outside crust to close your window. That will close everything, and you have to come back and reestablish connection, and that will be a mess in here. Now, the University of Arkansas environment has a lot of interesting tools, Tableau's, Teradata database, and Tableau is right here. Teradata is right here. SAS, a SAS environment, and a more comprehensive SAP environment, including their SAP HANA user. So if you are taking other classes, including our Process and Enterprise Management class, MIS 576, 567, and 568. If you're taking those two classes, you might also want to use this environment to give it a try. Maybe this is more reliable, I don't know. The University of Arkansas is a bigger university. They do have a bigger, more comprehensive University of Alliance with SAP. So these are the resources, and we are setting up so we can start learning the most important concept we want to learn in our class, that is SQL language. So until the next lecture that we have, get the system ready, go to the tutorial. You have about 2+, almost 3 weeks to get it ready until you have to submit your SQL learning assignment from chapter 2 onward. So stay tuned, and let's talk in another lecture.